So we find out this morning that Jesus changed water into wine at Cana in Galilee. But as I was putting this together, I asked myself that all-important question. Where is Cana? You know, to tell the truth, from everything that I've read and everything I can find out, we're not 100% sure, are we? It tells us that Cana is in Galilee. We think it's near Nazareth, where Jesus grew up, but we're not really sure. And you would think that we would know. We would know definitively. Because John told us that the miracle at Cana was Jesus' first sign, his first great deed, his first miracle. It gave the world its first glimpse at Jesus' glory. It kicked off his ministry. And you would think that Christians would exhaust every effort to find out where Cana was. And in fact, it has happened. Because Christian scholars have tried to find Cana. And they've determined a couple of different possibilities of where it could be, but they're not 100% sure. And that's the point. Jesus could have chosen to start his ministry any place. In the great cities of Jerusalem or Rome. But he chose to start in a small town, in the middle of nowhere. You might call it ministry to the margins. And as Jesus goes through his short life, we see him favoring ordinary people in ordinary places, don't we? Healing beggars along the way, and children, people who didn't count for much. You know, we find that Jesus, he ignored people who could have helped him. The religious leaders, or people with political clout, wealthy people. Even worse, he embarrassed them, didn't he? He insulted them. He made them his enemies. Jesus wasn't just being foolish. You know, he came to help people, and it was the down and outers who understood that they needed his help. The rich and famous people, they didn't care much for Jesus because they were so conceited that they couldn't admit to themselves that they needed his help. After all, Jesus, he was just a country boy from Nazareth, wasn't he? A country boy who failed to pay homage to the religious leaders and give them proper respect. A country boy who just didn't know his place. We need to remember Jesus' affinity for the poor and the vulnerable. Today, we live in a success-driven culture, don't we? One that celebrates money and achievements. And while we really don't like rich and famous people, I think we envy them for their money and their fame and their lifestyles. We'd like to be rich and famous, wouldn't we? If we could just figure out how to get there. You know, we're often tempted to look down our noses at people who aren't doing that well in life. But you know, we need to remember that people like that were Jesus' best friends, weren't they? So it's significant that Jesus chose a nowhere place like Cana to start his ministry. Ministry at the margins. Ministry among ordinary people in ordinary places. Jesus' first miracle is also interesting because Jesus works other miracles in this gospel. Most of those are healings. And in one case, he brings a man back from the dead. Those miracles, they gladden our hearts, don't they? Because we know what it's like to be sick. We know what it's like to grieve the death of a loved one. So when Jesus heals someone, it gives us hope. And perhaps when we need him, Jesus will be there to heal us too. But Jesus' first miracle wasn't healing a sick person or reviving a dead person. His first miracle was transforming water into wine. It was a nice gesture, wasn't it? But it sounds kind of like miracle light compared to the other healings that Jesus did. Those miracles. So why did Jesus, for his first miracle, just turn water into wine? Maybe it was because his mother pressured him. You know how moms can be, don't they? Don't look at your mother, man. Don't do it. You know, or perhaps he was just warming up. Maybe he decided to test his superpowers out on something small before meddling in with someone's health. Maybe he was just being careful. Or maybe there was something more significant involved here. Because in the Gospel of John, Jesus often says and does things that have two meanings. An obvious but superficial meaning, and the hidden but significant meaning. And that's true when he tells Nicodemus about new birth in chapter 3. And it's true when he tells the Samaritan woman about living water in chapter 4. And it's true when he turns water into wine in this chapter. You know, in some places, Jesus, he explains his intended meaning, but not here, not in Cana. We're left to guess. And I think there's a couple of possibilities that we can take in today. One is that the abundance of wine that Jesus creates, it's a symbol of the abundant grace that he brings. Jesus created enough wine for a dozen parties, just as he brings enough grace to save the worst of this world. And another possibility is found in the wine steward's comments, that the bridegroom has kept the best wine for last. The Jewish people, they had their law and they had their prophets, but God saved the best wine, Jesus Christ, until last. In other words, when Jesus turned that water into wine, he was sending us a message. It was subtle, but it was a message that most people would miss, but some would understand. And then at the end of the story, John says this. He says, what Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. I think that's the bottom line of this whole thing. This sign, this miracle, this transformation of water into wine, it revealed Jesus' glory. And his disciples believed in him. Jesus had just begun his ministry, and he had just called his disciples. And they had followed Jesus because there was something compelling about him. But the jury was still out, wasn't it? The disciples, they weren't sure. Maybe Jesus was sent from God, but maybe not. They still had that little doubt back in the mind. But after Cana, after this miracle of Jesus, they had no question in their minds that Jesus was the Messiah. Jesus transformed the water into wine. Fine wine, right? Abundant wine. And in so doing, he revealed his glory. He gave the disciples a glimpse into his identity and let them see something of his power, and they believed in him. You know, I think it'd be pretty cool to be there, wouldn't it? I wish I could have been there. I wish I could have seen the miracle, could have tasted that good wine. I find myself wondering if it was a Burgundy or a Chardonnay or a white Zinfandel or maybe even champagne. Champagne is a wine, right? That would have been perfect, wouldn't it? Champagne at the wedding. Champagne, if it were champagne that Jesus made, I'm sure that it would have been the very best champagne, right? $100 bottle? No. $1,000 bottle of champagne. The kind that I truthfully will never taste. I wish I would have been there so I could have tasted it. I wish I would have been there just so I could see Jesus at work. To see him do his thing. To see the worry on the faces of the hosts when they ran out of wine. And to see that worry replaced by amazement. And then to see that amazement replaced with pure joy. That would have been pretty cool. I wish that I could have been there to see Jesus' glory, because that would have confirmed my belief in him. You know, sometimes I, as well as you, we need a faith boost, don't we? That would have surely given me a faith boost. I'm sure it would have helped you as well. You know, but if I'm honest, I must admit that I have seen Jesus at work. I have seen Jesus do even more wonderful things than turning water into wine. Because Jesus, he transformed my life. He did it over a period of many years because I was blessed to have a Christian mother who introduced myself and my sisters to Jesus as a small child. And Jesus, he's been chipping away at my rough edges ever since. In decades now, he's been chipping away. You might doubt that because, as most of you know, I still have some rough edges. But please know that I tell you, if it had not been for Jesus, I don't know what my life would be like. In my life, Jesus has turned water into wine. And when I look out at this beautiful congregation, I can see Jesus working on your lives as well. I see faces that reveal God's glory. Every day of every week, I see people in this congregation doing kind and generous deeds out in our community. And you do them because Jesus has made a difference in your life. We'll be truthful, you have some rough edges, don't you? And some people criticize you because you're not 100% saintly. Answer them this way when that happens, okay? Just tell them that if it had not been for Jesus, well, if it had not been for Jesus, I just don't know what I'd do. If it hadn't been for Jesus, who turned my life, my water into wine, you don't know where you'd be, would you? And you know, Jesus is still doing it for us. Because winemaking is a slow process, isn't it? Who's ever smushed grapes between their toes? Now, I'm not putting my hand up at feet. Don, have you ever smushed a grape between your toes? Not exactly. You plant the vines, don't you? And then you got to water them. You got to watch them grow and fertilize them, and then you wait. And if you just stand there watching, nothing happens, does it? First, you see a little bit of growth, and you see a little more growth, and you see a little more growth. Before you know it, there's grapes on the vines. You know, if you go out in the middle of the vineyard, you can't hear the grapes growing, can you? You can't see them growing. If you come back tomorrow and look again, you still don't see any difference. But if you wait a month or two in between your visits, you'll see a big difference. God is turning water into wine. And so it's with us. As we walk with Christ day by day, we become more and more like Him. For some people, that growth comes very quickly. They experience a dramatic conversion, don't they? Yesterday they had no faith, and today they're full of faith. Okay? Man, oh man. But for most of us, spiritual growth is very slow. It's nearly invisible. But Christ is working on us. He's working in our lives day by day, turning water into wine. And when that happens, we reveal His glory. Our lives give other people a glimpse into Jesus Christ. And as we look around the congregation this morning, we see other people whose lives reveal Jesus' glory. Their witness strengthens our faith. And we're strengthened by them, and they are strengthened by us. And together, we reveal God's glory. And as we see in His glory, we come to believe in Him, just as those first disciples believed in Him. And as we reveal God's glory, we go out and help others to see and to believe. Later on in the Gospel of John, Jesus will tell us exactly how to go about revealing His glory. He will tell us of His new command, His great command. And if we really want to honor Jesus, this is the way to do it. Jesus says, "A new commandment I give you. Love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." So if we really want to honor Jesus, that's how we can do it, by loving one another. And when we do that, people will look at us, and they will see Jesus, and they will believe